So when we started talking about having a sermon series on the Psalms, I got really excited about the idea of this because there's a section of the Psalms that is very specific that is called the Songs of Ascent. And I really like this part of the Psalms because it talks about something that we don't really practice as much as we used to, the idea of pilgrimage. You know, pilgrimage is just simply this, going on a journey to a holy place. So there's all sorts of kinds of holy places. They don't have to be the religious ones necessarily. For Janelle's family, the pilgrimage every year is to Nova Scotia, to the Red House. And why do I call it a pilgrimage? Why is it holy ground? Because in all of the Evans houses, there is a wall, a shrine to the Red House. If you walk into my front room, there's a whole wall that has pictures of the Nova Scotia Red House. Their paintings, their photographs, their sketches of this place. And if you go into Janelle's sister's home, there's a whole wall there of the Red House. And when you walk into the house, one of the conversations always is at these shrines is who has the newest icon to put on the wall. And so they'll sit there and they'll discuss where they found the latest picture, the latest sketch, the latest drawing of this place. It's a holy place for the family. And there's a sense that if you don't get there in a summer, that you've missed something, that there's something wrong with your spiritual life. You got to go to Nova Scotia, to the Red House, on a pilgrimage once a year. That's the whole idea of pilgrimage, is going there on a regular basis to this place that is considered to be holy ground. In our religious traditions, Jerusalem is the place where many, many pilgrimages are made. Not just as Christians, but it's the place where the Dome of the Rock is, one of the holiest places in the religion of Islam. It's the place where creation began. It's the place where Abraham was supposed sacrifice of Isaac. And that's right there on the Temple Mount, the place where the Jewish temple existed before it was destroyed. And so Jewish people go all the time to Israel, to Jerusalem, to make that pilgrimage to that holy place. And of course, as Christians, it's oftentimes one of the places that people dream of going. I want to go to the Holy Land. I want to walk where Jesus walked. I want to see the hill that Jesus was crucified on. I want to go to the tomb where Jesus was resurrected. This idea of pilgrimage is part of a spiritual journey. And in the Jewish tradition, the whole idea of pilgrimage was part of what was in Torah. There were 3 times a year that Torah says that the nation of Israel is supposed to come together. And that is at Passover, at the Festival of Weeks or Pentecost, and in the fall, there is that celebration of the tabernacles, the booths. And it says in Moses' law that 3 times a year, the entire nation of Israel is supposed to gather. Well, once the temple was built, that place that you went to was the temple at Jerusalem. And so it's really quite an interesting thought of this thing of you've got to go 3 times a year to Jerusalem. And it's almost impossible for people to do that anymore. That's why the Passover service ends with this statement about we celebrate the Passover here this year, next year in Jerusalem. It's that desire to be able to go to that holy place. And that idea of pilgrimage was something that moved on into the early Christian church. And people wanted to go to Jerusalem. In the medieval times, as the great cathedrals of Europe were being built, it was not possible for people to make that pilgrimage to Jerusalem every year. So they began to build a pilgrimage path in the cathedrals. And so if you go to some of the great cathedrals, the closest one I know about is in New York City at the Riverside Baptist Church there, where in the front of the church is built this labyrinth, this prayer walk. Maybe you've seen some of these prayer labyrinths around. One of the most famous ones is in France, and it is at the Cathedral of Chartres. And I have an app on my tablet that is a prayer labyrinth. And this is the design of the one at that cathedral. And this one's called a finger labyrinth, because what you do is, since you can't walk it, you use your finger and follow the path. I don't know if you've ever done a prayer labyrinth before or what that all is about, but the concept of it is that spiritually, we go on that journey. Go on that journey to finding the center where God is. And so you walk in, and as you walk that path, either with your finger or on the floor, there are all these turns along the way. And the idea is that as you go in, you stop at each turn and you take a moment and you meditate. And you allow all of those things that are weighing you down, keeping you from that center of God, and you release those. You let those go. You let go of all your worries, all your fears and concerns. And then when you get to the center, you take time to just be with God. And then as you walk back out, following that same curving path, you get yourself ready to return spiritually into the world and to engage the world. I really just love that spiritual practice. In fact, this week, as I've been doing this, getting ready for today, is I've been reading those Psalms that are called the Psalms of Ascent, which are Psalm 120 through Psalm 134. And at those turns, I would stop and read the psalm. That's what they were created for. They were created for this idea that one would journey to Jerusalem. And we're not sure when this was actually used, but most scholars believe that because the design of the temple is that there were these 14 steps from the women's court to the court of the men and to the court of the priests, that the Levite musicians would start at the bottom and they would sing that first song of ascent. And then as they went up the 14 steps, that they'd stop at each step and sing one of these psalms. You know, we've heard two of them already, and we'll end with a third one. And it has this progression when you read them of going from, I need you, God, to, we are here in your temple to praise you. And so there's this idea that you went up these 14 steps. And as people learn those songs, they also use them in other journeys to bring that same sense of meditation and spirituality to what they were doing. So as the story talks about Jesus and his family going to the temple for one of these occasions, and Jesus stays there at the temple and is talking with the rabbis and the scribes, and Mary and Joseph return with the family, and it's already when they're in the journey back that they discover that Jesus isn't with them. That as they journeyed in those kinds of things with groups of family together, they would also sing these songs of ascent. You know, I think about those long car ride vacations when I was growing up. And you had to figure out what you were going to do to keep yourself occupied along the way. Maybe you played that game where, you look for something that starts with the letter of the alphabet and go through the letters of the alphabet, or you find out how many license plates from how many different states that you can go on. And if it's a long enough trip, then you start singing 99 bottles of beer on the wall, 99 bottles of beer. And these people will be traveling from their homes to Jerusalem, and so they would be talking as they went along and keeping themselves occupied, and they would sing these songs. And it would lead them in preparation to coming to this wonderful, holy place. I want to suggest to you that in this time when we cannot make our pilgrimage into the sanctuary to be together, that we make those pilgrimages in our personal life. As you listen to this sermon, I hope that you're getting that feeling of traveling towards God. And that even though we're doing this through technology and media, that spiritually we're making that journey to be together with one another. It's one of the things that gets me through the week. Knowing that Sunday morning we will be together in spirit. And so we can make that prayer. Today, we worship here. Tomorrow, we will worship together in the sanctuary. Thanks be to God. Amen.